So in front of you now, you'll see Sage 50 Forecasting 2007, which is the most up-to-date version of the software. So as usual with Sage software, we give you quite a lot of help in your initial welcome screen. So we take you through how to access the help, and also we have our Ask Sage directory on the website. So if you have an existing login, you're able to log in and view the Ask Sage articles, which are really in-depth knowledge base articles on specific areas within any of the Sage software that you use. We also provide you with some getting started help. So there's a guide to doing a completely new forecast, so if you're doing one from scratch. And we also provide you with some help doing a brand new forecast directly over from Sage 50 or Sage Instant. There's also some practice information in there, so we provide you with some demonstration data. So we will be having a look at the practice data just later on as part of the demonstration. And then there's also access to your regular routine, so whether you're opening up a forecast, so you can create as many forecasts as you need. So you could have different forecasts based on different scenarios for the one company. And you can create monthly or weekly forecasts. You can also base your monthly or your weekly forecasts on information from Sage 50, and you can forecast from an existing template. So you can also access some of these options from your file menu at the top left hand side. So in the demonstration at the moment, we're going to run through setting up a new monthly forecast from some Sage 50 accounts information that I have on my version of Sage 50 accounts. So in here, we have the list of all of the company files that I have on my copy of Sage 50. You can scan and you can browse, so if you know exactly where your data is stored, then you can obviously browse to it in here. You may have guessed I'll be picking up my Sage 50 forecasting hotlink, and I simply connect onto that. The username and password is the one that's set up for that individual company within Sage. And then you get your Create Forecast window appearing. So it's quite important at this stage to make sure that you're choosing the correct options for your client on this forecast. So obviously confirm that it's the correct company that you've picked up. It will bring over the default layout of accounts, but obviously if you've got different layout of accounts set up within Sage accounts, then you can obviously bring that over instead. And it may be advisable once you're using forecasting to actually set up a new chart of accounts within Sage 50 that maybe more reflects the items that you want to record from a forecasting point of view. And then the second section is to select the data that you wish to use. Now, if you've been setting up budgets within Sage 50, then it's a good idea to obviously base your budget data on your Sage 50 budget data. However, a lot of people won't have created budgets within Sage 50 accounts, so they may wish to create it based on their actual data, or I'm going to create mine based on my prior year information. Your actual, in most cases, I would presume that you want it to match over to your actual data in Sage 50 accounts, but you do have the option of having none in there, and then you can, put in your data manually. And then you just choose the month that you want to show your data up until. So whenever you get accurate information up until, and it will show you the whole financial year in there. So we'll just bring it over up until April at this point. And then when it comes to the structure of your forecast, you can do it just based on nominal code, which most people would use because it will give you that more detailed analysis of the values coming over. Or you can do it simply based on the category, rather than each individual nominal code that lies behind that. And you can also base it creating existing departments, so if you tick the box and your all departments will come over in there, then you can link that through to all your departments within Sage as well. And then when it comes to the forecast details, the start date will default to be the first day in your financial year within Sage. You can have more than just a single year, so you can do maybe like a 5-year, or as I suggested, a 50-year forecast. The financial start date will come through automatically. The period structure will be in months because we selected to do a monthly forecast. And then the first data period will be April. If your client was set up in a different currency, then that could come through as well. And then you simply click OK. Choose the right options up here first. Click OK. And that will pull the information into a brand new forecast. So it sets up, as you can see up the top, it's an SFF file, is the name of the Sage. Used to be called financial forecasting, so that's why it's an SFF file, which is not very easy to say. So as I mentioned before, you can save that. So you can do a save as if you wish, and you can save it to somewhere particular that you want to save it to. So you might want to put it in your client folder along with your other information for that client. So in your window in here, you've got your navigator area through your record list. So your list of all of your nominal codes will be replicated in here. So this just mirrors my nominal structure within the Sage 50 accounts that I've come over from. I've also got a section here where I can flex the information that's in here. So this is how you would manage your what if scenarios. And you can also see down here the ability to choose what you view on this key forecast values section. So this is like your live update of what your budget values are and your actuals as well. So your actuals are in blue and your budgeted element is in yellow. So as you can see here, I can choose to just view my budget, or I can revise my budget and view that, or I can view my actuals and my original budget. And now if you want to see more values in the bottom half of this screen, I would probably suggest that you turn on a few more just to give you that information in a live environment. So you've got a list of all of the available key values down here, and you simply just tick the ones that you want to add in. So I would normally switch on my total turnover, especially when I'm doing what if scenarios based on changes in items, sales, budget. So if I click save to that, it will now automatically add in those values along the bottom section of this view at the moment. So then, as you can see at the moment, we've got our actuals coming in up until April. So say you had been working on the client Sage 50 in the background and you now had the May values as actuals, then you can pull this forward. So if you go into your actuals and budget menu, you can change your latest actual period, and it just does warn you that you can go forward but you can't go back unless your actuals are turned off. You save that and it will run through soaking in the information that's the actual values up until May 2012 now. So you can see them getting pulled forward. So then in there, you'll notice that we've got these options along the top where we can manage our hotlinks, refresh our hotlinks, and have it set as automatic. So what that means is, again, if you're working on your Sage 50 and you know your May values are in there now, maybe you've gone and processed a journal or done a few changes to the accounts and Sage 50 side of things. In normal circumstances, you would close down the Sage financial forecasting file and open it up again, and it would refresh. So every time you open the file, it refreshes the values. So that's why it's classed as a hotlink rather than just an import. But at any point you can refresh your hotlinks. So if you click on the button, if you know that you've been processing in Sage 50 accounts, you can then soak that information over again and it will update the actuals based on the changes that you've made. If you want to see it at a more detailed level, so you can expand down, you can look at your sales categories, for example. You'll see all of the information coming through, but you'll also be able to click onto your sales tab and you'll see that our actuals entry method is set as Sage 50. So it knows that the values, the £2,000, £1,000 each month, have come over. Very rounded actual figures we have in this company. And then for the remainder of the year, it's still the budgeted items. Now, as I mentioned, there are other ways of getting information into the forecasting software. One of the other ones that people sometimes use is the Excel hotlink. So if we select that as an option, all that you would do in that circumstance is you would just browse where it says the hotlink details over here. you simply browse to the spreadsheet that you want to bring the information in from. You open up that spreadsheet and then you select the area that you want to bring it in. So mine will be completely wrong because this is obviously something that's not related to sales, but the values will come in there, and you choose the hotlink range as well, monthly, and that's you. If you make a change and then you think, no, I don't want to stick with that, you can just close down and you can say, no, I don't want to save my changes. Your other option is to enter sales manually. So if you want to be able to change those values, then you can simply just do that in there by manually overwriting once you've changed it to enter sales. So it will retain what came over from Sage, but it will allow you to overwrite it as well. And then you'll notice that we also have a link from MMS or line 100, so it does have a link with that as well, or you can set up specific formula for a cell as well. So a few different options in there. But by default, I would imagine in most cases you'll be using your actual data over from Sage 50. And then if there's any additional records that you need to set up from a forecasting point of view, you can use this new record functionality up the top. So depending on the section that you're on, so if you're on sales, for example, and you go to new record, you get the ability to set up a standard sales record, accrued sales, pre-sales, or simply a memo account. So if it was something like accrued sales, then in here you would get all of the basic details, but then you would have your sales, so you could enter your sales manually down here. Now if you enter a value up the top, it will put in that same value as the budget for the remainder of each of the months. You've got your actual values are automatically calculated, so there's no need to actually enter them in here. Your receipts, so whether you want to use your credit days, and you can set up standard credit days within your forecasting options down the bottom here. I'll just say no to that just now. So within your forecasting options you can set up your default credit days and debtor days and creditor days in here. So if I just put that as 30 and 30 and save that. So then your receipts will show your credit days in them, and there'll also be the VAT taken into account. Now my VAT rate is on an older rate, it's on 17.5%. That's something that you need to watch with the software, is because it is an older version, you will need to go in and review the tax rates that are in there. So to do that, you've got your forecast menu again. The currency exchange rates can be updated in there. Your VAT rates can be updated in here. You've got corporation tax tables as well, so just your default. You can add new tables as well. You can see how many bands are in it and what the percentage is, depending on the level of income. You can also set up payroll tables, so you can have the different tables for your PAYE, for your employers and your employees' NI, and then you've also got pension tables, so you simply just add a new pension scheme and you input the relevant details against those pension schemes from an employer and employee point of view, so the rates at the different values and when they're valid from. So the more work that you put in to get all this side of it right, and obviously you only need to do that once for each company, then when it comes to things like your cash flow, it'll be much more accurate based on that as well. So what we'll do now is, before we move on to the what if scenarios, we'll just open up the demonstration data because it's got a few more areas within it. It's got a bit of a more detailed breakdown from the product's point of view as well. So the good old classic wine company, which I'm sure you've come across before. So in here they've categorised their sales into different sections, and obviously this pulls over from Sage 50 as well. So they've got all of their sales categories broken down. So when you look at things like the what if scenarios, you can do it at a folder level. So if I select my sales, for example, and I want to see, well, what would be the impact on my budget if I was to flex that, so say I wanted to increase all sales by 10%, then I would change that flex percentage to 110%. And if I tab out of there, you'll notice the values in the budget will change. Now that's all of my sales flexed by 10%, but I can also drill down. So I might just think white wine's going to do well, or I might think that one of the specific white wines is going to do really well. So maybe, I don't know, we'll choose an Australian one maybe. Yarunga, is that how you pronounce it? Yarunga Fields. I'm sure these are made up. So if we select that individual record, you'll see that the sales have been flexed by 10% for that individual record. But then we might think that that individual wine's going to do really well this year. So we might want to flex that by an additional 10%. So you would just do that again. If I tab out of there, you'll notice my budget amending. And the reason it's 121% is because it's 10% of 110 rather than 120% in total, if that makes sense. So you've got your flexing ability in there. Now what you can do when it comes to flexing, if we go into our forecast menu again along the top, we have a flexing menu down here. So we can also set start and end dates to our flex. So by default it will flex for the entire budget period, but I can set start and end date. So if I only think that my flex is going to apply maybe from October until, we'll say maybe February or something of that year, then I can save that and I'll adjust the flex just for that, just for those applicable months. Now you do only get the ability to apply a period as an overall, so you can't say, well, for this element of the flex I want it to be just that month. What you would have to do is you'd have to do one of the elements and then you can actually set your flex as the base data. So if you flexed everything by 10%, then you can set that as a base data and then you could do just one of the products with start and end dates that are applicable to that business. So it asks you what it is you want to set as the base data and then you can move forward with that. And then also within here you've got a nice ability to just remove all flexes. So if you've been playing about with it all and you can't remember what you've added in as a flex, you can simply just remove all of your flexes. Now what I've heard of people doing in the past is actually putting this software onto a laptop. So if your client's got a meeting with a bank, for example, and you have offered to go with them to support them as their financial advisor and accountant, then you could come in with this software with obviously all of their up-to-date actuals, with the budgets that you've talked about, but then you can also do your flexing during the meeting. So instead of having to produce lots of different reports with lots of different flexes on them to tell them what would be the impact of certain increase in costs or certain scenarios, projects that they might want to take on, then you can come and do it in a live environment during the meeting. And then obviously you can then report on that after, once you've decided on what scenario you want to go forward with. Okay, so that's your flexing from that point of view. So then, as I mentioned before, you've got different records depending on the type of information that you're looking at. So we've been looking at flexing our sales just now. If we were to move down and maybe look at our direct costs, just as an example, you'll see that we've got the option of adding in records for accrued and prepaid costs. We can manage the stock side of things here as well. The wages and those type of records can be set up. Fixed assets, so you might want to set up a financed asset, for example. So with a financed asset, it will ask you show the loan as split short and long term. If the asset was sold, payment that was received in if there was a gain or loss in sale, and then enter the depreciation manually. Direct costs, do they relate to any direct costs that are set up within Sage? So you get that coming over, and then you've also got your interest charged. So obviously this will all have an impact on your cash flow statement as well. If you move on to this financing, then you can set up a loan, and then your loan record, again you get to put in the loan balance. Now what you do need to make sure that you do when you set up a new forecast within here is you do need to manually go through and set up what your opening balances are. So under your actuals and budget menu, you've got an opening balance sheet. So my opening balance sheet is obviously completed in this demonstration company. Yours will be blank. Even if you're linking through from stage 50, it won't know what the opening balances were at the start of the year. So you will need to enter them manually, obviously, to make sure that your cash flow reflects those as opening balances. All the way down. So as we said, within our new loan record, you've got your loan balance, entering the capital outstanding, any additional capital borrowed, what was paid, the interest charged, and the interest that was paid during that period as well. Same rules apply. If you input the one value into the top of the columns, it will copy that value all the way down through the individual months. Provisions, you can enter a general provision in there, other assets. So a grant is quite a popular one as well, just to make sure that you've got all of your receipts, your income, your payments, and your end balance as well coming through against your grant. And then things like your capital account, you've got your capital reserve, and then you've got the option of just adding in a new memo, which is simply just to put a narrative against the forecast in general. So that's you had a look at all of the different elements that you can enter in terms of your nominal record. I think I'm going to sneeze. And then that's the hay fever season, unfortunately, at the moment. So in here, we'll then have a look at, although you can see certain values in here, you've got some nice reports within the software as well. So you can either access them quickly through these buttons, or you've got your reports menu along the top here. So something like your P&L report, if we click on there, now you will get to tailor these options in here. And if you view the report, just as it stands at the moment, just make that slightly bigger for you. And you get quite a detailed P&L, so it will bring in your actuals up until it has them, and then from that point onwards until the end of the year, it will be your budgeted items coming through. So if I just scroll down, you'll see all of the detail. Now if you feel that's far too detailed to print off, then you do have the option of squashing it up. So normal kind of Excel rules apply, where you've got your kind of subtotals coming in here at the left hand side option. So one will squash it up into your total sales, direct costs, gross profit, etc. And then we'll have it at the first subtotal level, your second, and then again your detailed one in there. So that's your P&L report brought in just on its own on a standard basis. Now you can also do like a P&L variance report, so it'll show your actuals against your budget. We can run a balance sheet report, we can run a cash flow, so say we do a cash flow one at the moment. It's doing it for 5 months by default. I think I'll just do it for a year just to show you that. So that's your cash flow for the year coming through in there, with all of your items that are affecting your cash flow. And again, you've got the ability to squash that up into different levels, depending maybe who you're speaking to about your cash flow. And then you also have a really handy option of running multiple reports. So again, either from the multiple button or from your reports menu up here, you've got multiple reports. You've also got some other reports as well, but they'll come up in your multiple reports option as well. So say we wanted one Microsoft Excel workbook to contain a variety of reports. We could do, say we do our variance one actually for the P&L, standard balance sheet, cash flow, funds flow, and then maybe a ratio and statistics one as well. We'll just do it for 1 year. View that report. It'll take a few seconds just to load the individual pages. And then when it's finished, you'll have, in this case, the variance one. I'll just squash that up a wee bit more. Coming through, you've got your balance sheet report with all of the details of the assets. Again, it's up to you at what level you want to disclose that. And this demonstration company actually has the stock values on it as well. Your cash flow coming through in there, your funds flow from the operating activities, and then return on investment, servicing of finance coming through in there as well, and then your ratio and statistics. So that's just five reports that I've picked out to include in my workbook. So quite nice being able to pull them all together very simply into one management report. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, we also offer graphical format reports. So this is under your graphs menu along the top. So something like your P&L, I'll just view that as a graph. It opens up and you can also drill down into each of these levels as well. So if you want to see the sales elements broken down by the individual products, so you want to see white wine or Australian white wine or one individual product, then you can go and see the actual figures that lie underneath that as well. So it drills right down as far as it can for you, and then you can jump back using this navigator along the top. If you don't like blues and greens, and if you want to be a bit more tailored about it, some people say that these colours are a bit too similar when you're trying to work out what they relate to, then you can use this palette button up the top to access your properties. If you right click on any of these key elements, then you can change the colour. And you can also change the title and things like that in there as well. Now, as I mentioned, you can export these graphs. So you can export it either to Excel or to PDF. So if I just export it to Excel and stick it on my desktop at the moment, I'll just call it P&L graph. So you can see that opened up within Excel. And now, I know this doesn't do it automatically, but it's easy enough to then just copy everything from there, and then you can embed that within your other workbook. So now you have a workbook that not only includes all of your reports, but you've also got your profit and loss graph in there as well. And you can keep on going, so you can get as much detail into that workbook as you require for your scenario. So that's your profit and loss graph. But then you do have graphs also for your balance sheet, for your cash flow, and for your funds flow. So if we look at the cash flow just as another example, much easier to see trends in the different elements of the cash by looking at it in a graphical format. Even if you are an accountant, it's still easier to work out what's been happening when you look at it in a picture format. And again, you've got the same ability in there just to drill down. That's us had a look at the main functionality within the software.